Okay, you can begin.
All right, Jason.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to presentation one, which is the first student presentation of this semester for this course, Leadership and Ethics. We'll be presenting to you chapter 4 of the text, Exploring Leadership, which is Understanding Yourself. I encourage you to take notes and feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll be asking 5 true or false questions. So we would like 5 volunteers to attempt these questions. Our group consists of Darren Earl and yours truly, Jason Dover. I will be presenting first, followed by my colleague, Darren Earl. Key to understanding yourself is learning about your personality type. There's a variety of personality assessment tools that help you to discover who you are. If you have not taken the Kersey temperament sort of questionnaire on the e-classroom as yet, I encourage you to do so, which is the first recommendation that I'm actually making. Provided that you answer the questions candidly, you will receive an accurate description of your personality type. In fact, the results of this personality test will help you to identify your strengths and weaknesses, which require focused reflection in order for you to fully appreciate what they are. Being aware of how you prefer to think, relate, learn, and find personal meaning is an important self-awareness skill. Being able to articulate what you believe and what you value helps you understand your own motivations and behaviors. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses helps you grow and relate to others with authenticity and credibility. Remember, leadership involves other people. So self-understanding is essential to authenticity in your relationships with those persons. Perhaps the most basic life trait that translates to leadership effectiveness is honest, authentic self-awareness that is open to growth, learning, and change. This chapter challenges you to consider the things about yourself that shape your personal identity and fuel your motivations. It explores the role of self-awareness in leadership, including aspects of self-concept and self-esteem. It also explores how you form your values and the role of values in developing character. Your personality preferences for how you approach decisions and how you learn are also addressed. In order to provide quality leadership, you must understand yourself. In the movie The Matrix, after Neo took the red pill, he was unplugged from the Matrix and was born into the real world, which was Zion. He was mentored, as we all know, by Morpheus, who guided him along his path of self-development in his preparation to lead the people of Zion to their salvation. Next slide. This first clip shows a pivotal point in his journey.
Good, don't
Yeah.
they? I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it.
How did you know?
Oh, what's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything? You're cuter than I thought. I can see why she likes you.
Who?
Not too bright, though. You know why Morpheus brought you to see me. So, what do you think? Do you think you're the one?
Honestly, I don't know.
You know what that means? It's Latin. Means know thyself. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Being the one is just like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love. You just know it. Through and through. Balls to bones. Well, I better have a look at you. Open your mouth, say ah.
Ah.
Okay. I'm supposed to say, that's interesting, but then you say,
But what?
but you already know what I'm going to tell you.
I'm not the one.
Sorry, kid. You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
The next clip we are about to play for you from the Matrix Revolutions shows Neo at the point in his journey where he had overcome his weaknesses and had developed his abilities and strengths and was now on the path to the top tier of the psychology theorist Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is self-actualization. Recognize that at this point, Neo had developed a sense of trust in himself to be congruent and to truly know the basis of his effectiveness as a leader. It is also important to note that on Neo's first visit to the Oracle, she showed him the sign with the Latin words, know thyself. And on his final visit, she showed him that sign again. This illustrates the dire importance of knowing and understanding yourself with regards to leadership. So this is a quote from a gentleman by the name of Kevin Paniker, which can be found in the text. It is of great importance to recognize one's strengths and weaknesses because only then can one realize one's capability and limitations. Recognizing capacity allows leaders to commit themselves in such a way as to utilize their capability. Recognizing limitations allows for humility and the acknowledgement that leaders cannot succeed at everything. So that last part of the quote that speaks about recognizing limitations, I think is a very important point to note. Acknowledging the fact that even leaders have limitations will serve to keep you grounded, knowing that there are certain things that are just simply outside of your control. One common observation by many recognized leaders is that no one can teach you about yourself except you. Right, this reminds me of the first clip we showed where the Oracle was telling Neo that being the one is like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love, you just know it. Similarly, no one can really teach you about yourself except you. Counselors, advisors, and so on can help to guide you along your self-awareness journey, but the ultimate responsibility of self-awareness rests with you. All right, so development of self for leadership. All right, so Venice, 1989, observes 4 lessons from which to develop self-knowledge. So the first one from left to right, no one can teach you about yourself better than you. All right, secondly, and there's an old adage that says, if you point the finger at someone, there are 3 more fingers pointing back at you. Self-development begins when you realize that there is no one else to blame other than you. The third point, there are no limits to what you can learn if you just put your mind to it. And the fourth point, and the I say that reflection upon your experiences is indispensable to true understanding and self-development. That sheep mentality that Mr. Bisu spoke about in one of the earlier live sessions is a very common, albeit significant challenge that is encountered in the area of leadership. Typically, in a group setting, most persons would shy away from taking up that leadership role, which requires the skill of self-leadership, motivating yourself into action by means of taking the initiative to lead. A very good example of an instance where self-leadership skills were demonstrated was actually in the very first live session that we had, where Clarissa stepped up and embraced the leadership role by taking the initiative to organize and document the various groups for their respective chapter presentations. She may have sensed hesitation by the other members of the class, including myself, and as a result, she motivated herself into action and got the job done. Each member of any group has a different combination of strengths and weaknesses. The interesting thing is that if you place too much emphasis on your strengths, they can actually become your weaknesses. And things that you would consider weaknesses may actually be seen as strengths by others. Take, for example, this chapter presentation. Let's say that I might be very good at public speaking, which would be one of my strengths. If I talk beyond my time for this presentation and cause our group to go beyond the allotted time of 1.5 hours, what was originally my strength would have become my weakness. On the other hand, let's say one of my weaknesses is the fact that I don't prepare examples that I would use in the presentation beforehand. That might actually turn out to be a strength in that I might be able to think up of examples during this live presentation that might be more relatable to the class than examples I would have researched online. Leadership self-awareness grows when you can identify your personal strengths and weaknesses in working with others toward change. So identifying your passions and strengths. Right? Clifton and Nelson, 1992, recommend that you find your passions and strengths by trying these 5 strategies. So the first one, resist the temptation to seek outside validation from other people. Acknowledge when you have done something well, even if no one else takes notice. Secondly, embrace that feeling of satisfaction when you did something great. For example, if you got an A in financial procedures and budgeting last semester, that would have certainly added to your well-being. The third point, know what things you find easy to learn quickly. Let's say it's easy for you to learn how to strike up a conversation that feels natural with a complete stranger. Or perhaps you have a knack for learning and mastering new computer technologies. All right. Fourthly, really look at your successes and see what are the things that you excel at doing. What might be very helpful is paying attention to the things you are regularly complimented on. For example, you might observe that people usually tell you that you are a very good listener. In so doing, you make people feel special, you make people feel good about themselves. And as a result, people are drawn to you. All right, the fifth point, consider your patterns of excellence, whether that might be practicing a skill such as cooking or baking, or excelling at a sport like football or basketball. You feel yourself improving at it each time you do it. Identifying these passions and strengths will reinforce your confidence and self-esteem by acknowledging that you bring reliable talents to an endeavor and add value to the leadership of a force. According to the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 16 of the King James Version of the Holy Bible, a man's gift maketh room for him, and bringeth him before great men. This principle was echoed by Buckingham and Clifton, 2001. And they said that one of our greatest assets as human beings is talent. Knowing yourself well includes discovering your talents, the things you are naturally good at. As human beings, however, we tend to focus on our weaknesses. But if you think about it, we don't have enough time in our lifespan to fix all of our weaknesses or turn them into strengths, while at the same time trying to work from our natural talents. Now, this doesn't mean that you should ignore your weaknesses. Rather, you should find ways to manage your weaknesses so that you can be more productive and fulfilled. When you play to your strengths, you are working from the philosophy of talent. So Buckingham and Clifton propose two assumptions that can guide you in your leadership. The first one, each person's talents are enduring and unique. I'll repeat that. Pay attention to that. Each person's talents are enduring and unique. And secondly, each person's greatest room for growth is in the areas of his or her greatest strength. Leading from a philosophy of talents and strengths is an outgrowth of an emerging new field called positive psychology. This new field of psychology has moved away from the clinical diagnostic approach of looking at what is wrong with an individual to paying attention to what is right within each person. Leading from this framework will energize you and others in a positive way, open up new possibilities, and allow you and others to do what you are best at. This is a simple yet powerful theory you can use to guide your daily actions and interactions. Dunn's theory of the dipper and the bucket. Imagine that everyone has an invisible bucket that you can get filled or emptied on a regular basis by an invisible dipper. When your bucket gets emptied, you experience negative feelings such as depression, disappointment, and discouragement. When your bucket gets filled, you experience positive feelings like confidence, encouragement, and contentment. The dipper is recognized as a powerful tool in leadership, allowing us to fill another person's bucket by saying positive things and focusing on what that person is good at. Now, you can also use the dipper to dip from someone's bucket, making that person feel diminished. Your own self-esteem is actually enhanced when you use the dipper to fill someone's bucket. When you fill your own bucket and another person's bucket, you are actually affirming your own and the other person's strengths and talents. Think about what you do best. Then think about how you felt when you received recognition for a job well done. For those of you who love to sing and that's what you do best, think about the lusty round of applause you received the last time you sang at karaoke. Think about how good you felt. I'm sure you felt motivated to learn new songs and to continue singing and performing because that is something that you are good at doing and you enjoy doing. The people that clapped for you filled your bucket. They made you feel good about yourself. Research has shown that when you have opportunities to do what you are best at doing, and when you are recognized for that, you will experience more meaning and satisfaction in what you are doing, and your productivity will increase as a result. Leading from your talents and strengths will keep your bucket filled. Instead of focusing on eliminating your weaknesses, what you should actually do is manage your weaknesses so that you can spend the majority of your time developing your strengths until your strengths become so powerful that they make your weaknesses irrelevant. However, you can also overcome your weaknesses and turn them into strengths. Tom Cruise, Orlando Bloom, Keanu Reeves, Whoopi Goldberg, Leonardo da Vinci, Pablo Picasso, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, John Lennon, huge names. What do all of these people have in common? Can anyone take a guess? All right, anyone at this point in time, would any of my colleagues like to take a guess what all of these people just mentioned have in common? All right, so no takers, right? All right, well, each of them has coped with dyslexia. They may have struggled to be quick readers or accurate spellers, but all learned to manage that weakness of dyslexia and found ways to prevent it from repressing their strengths. Tom Cruise said that he had to train himself to focus his attention by becoming very visual and learning how to create mental images in order to understand what he read. There are examples of persons who overcame their weaknesses and turned them into strengths. The actor James Earl Jones, for example, had a debilitating childhood stutter, which he overcame so successfully that he became a remarkable orator. That being said, we encourage you to focus on your strengths and develop your talents. How you think and feel about yourself is the energy that fuels your motivation. Self-concept is how we objectively describe ourselves. Usually it is based on our roles and attributes. So, for example, I might say that I am a corporal in the regiment who is currently pursuing an associate's degree at CUSTAT. That's my self-concept. That's how I objectively describe myself. Self-esteem is the subjective element of how you feel about yourself. In my case, for example, I might say that I'm a very intelligent person that has great academic capabilities, but I might be lacking in social skills and the ability to make new friends. So I feel proud of my intelligence and my academic prowess, but I feel disappointed in myself for not being more socially skilled. This speaks to my self-esteem, the subjective element of how I feel about myself. Self-awareness would lead to having an accurate self-concept. Honoring your strengths and addressing your weaknesses are essential first steps toward higher self-esteem. Self-esteem is enhanced if you can identify your strengths and weaknesses and know that you are growing and progressing in the areas you want to improve. High self-esteem is a result of valuing your self-concept. You are proud of who you are. You think highly of yourself. Low self-esteem, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. You are not proud of who you are. You do not think highly of yourself. Low self-esteem occurs when your expectation of yourself and your estimation of yourself are not congruent. Take, for example, this MDPS program. Now, there may be some students who currently possess a 3.0 grade point average. Now, for some students, attaining a 3.0 GPA would actually cause them to have high self-esteem because they would have expected to obtain a 3.0 GPA based on their self-concept. In fact, a 3.0 GPA may have even exceeded their expectations. In either case, their estimation of themselves would be high because they achieved what they expected to achieve, and even more in some cases. So there is congruence between self-expectation and self-estimation. Now, that same 3.0 GPA would actually cause some students to have low self-esteem because they would have expected to obtain, let's say, a 3.9 or probably even a perfect 4.0 GPA based on their self-concept. In this instance, their estimation of themselves would be low because they achieved way below what they expected to achieve. Hence, there is no congruence in this situation between self-expectation and self-estimation. Self-confidence is the ability to know that you can rely on your strengths, competencies, and skills in any context. Self-confident people know that since they have performed well in the past, they can do so again. Accepting ourselves is one of the hardest things to do. Realizing that you cannot change certain things about yourself is a step toward higher self-esteem. For example, if you are 5 feet 6 inches in height, you will not become 6'2". You can, however, learn new skills and add to your knowledge base. If some aspects of yourself are negative influences on your self-esteem, you must differentiate between those you can actually do something about and those you just need to think about differently, which can lead to a higher level of self-acceptance. Perceiving things differently is called cognitive reframing, which is a different way of thinking. If you have a shy and quiet personality, for example, you may have felt bad when you thought about that, but you might feel empowered if you reframe those same characteristics as thoughtful and reflective. Cognitive reframing can certainly improve your self-esteem. Becoming aware of the influence of either heredity, which is nature, or socialization, which is nurture, in your own development is essential to understanding yourself. For example, you may be tall, or you may be a tall, big individual, and may have learned that some people find you imposing. They assume you'll be outgoing and aggressive, even though you are probably quiet and shy. Or you may be a short, small individual, but you may have learned that because of your high self-confidence, you have a stately presence. So people might say that you appear taller and bigger than you actually are. Nevertheless, you can choose to develop your desired traits or skills regardless of how you came to be the way you are. Although you cannot always change the way others view you because they bring their own biases and attributions, you can at least be authentic as you try to be the person you would like to be. The psychological study of individuality presents an opportunity for personal insight by reviewing the ways scholars understand the ranges of human behavior. By knowing how others respond, you can assess how their response is similar to or different from your response. So take, for example, the Will Smith fiasco that took place recently at the Academy Awards. Will Smith's reaction to his wife's displeasure with the joke that was made about her by the host was influenced by the characteristics of his personality that makes him the way that he is. Because you are unique, however, you may find that your reaction would have been different, albeit to varying degrees, based upon the characteristics that, that make you the individual that you are. Irrespective of the situation being presented in the various theories about human behavior, you are able to identify with what is most like you or least like you to better understand yourself and to see how others might be similar to or different from you. There are salient characteristics that define your personality and shape the unique individual that you are. How do you believe or behave differently because you are a man or a woman? How does your age influence your interests and views? How important is your religious persuasion in guiding your thinking? Gender, age, and religious persuasion are just a few of the factors that shape your identity. As Mr. Bisu covered in chapter 2, leaders are made, not born. We believe the capacity for leadership is within each and every single one of you. As difficult as it may be to determine how characteristics like your gender, ethnicity, or religious persuasion influence the way you think and act, it is even more complicated and important to identify the values and beliefs that lead to your ethical behaviors and build your character. The values that guide actions are among the hardest things to articulate. If your actions and thoughts are a mystery to you, you may not have adequately examined your own value system. Beliefs shape values, which influence thoughts and actions. If you can articulate your values, then you are likely aware of the principles and beliefs that serve as your guides. Each of us has preferences in how we construct our own value systems. You may prefer to be logical or scientific, or you may be emotional. Knowing that you have preferences in how you construct your value system should help you understand yourself and others better. No one process is preferred over another. Your process reflects how you have come to construct meaning from your experience. The discussion of values should always raise the crucial question, whose values and for what purpose? Some values such as promise or promise keeping and non-violence are so fundamental that they have been found to be norms in most civilized societies. Understanding values becomes a central component to understanding others and to achieving a common purpose. So, for additional reading, to get further insight into the self, I'll now recommend the book Introduction to Psychology by Rod Plotnick and Haig Kuyunjian.
Character and ethical behavior. Authenticity is rooted in the action that is both true and real in ourselves and in the world. By Terry, 1993. Whether we frame it as integrity, authenticity, or credibility, the very core of your character is central to sincerely linking with others in the spirit of community towards working towards change. When asked what leadership qualities he looked for in leaders in the US Army, Desert Storm's retired General Norman Schwarzkopf said, probably far more important to me than competence was character, integrity, ethics, and morality. I looked for people who were willing to serve a cause and were what I would call selfless leaders rather than self-serving leaders. We belonging to different arms of national security, we can all, if we take a moment, we can sum up in our minds some selfless leaders and some self-serving leaders. And I believe most of us will find that the selfless leaders are in the minority. Trust has been crucial in my relationship with others. If I don't think I can trust someone, then I won't pursue a relationship with the person. I think trust has to be earned through consistency and honesty. In building relationships with others, I try never lie and always be there for the person. Being faithful to a person breaks down barriers and builds trust. Being trustworthy also makes others feel like you are someone they can follow. So without trust, I don't think a meaningful relationship is possible. That was said by Erin Fogelman, who is a volunteer and leader in a Young Life, president of Quest, and a tutor at the University Writing and Communication Center. She studies English at the East Tennessee State University. character and the ethical behavior. The Jovison Institute of Ethics proposed the 6 pillars of character, which are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Trustworthiness has pillars like honesty, integrity, and loyalty. It's far more than just about telling the truth. Being worthy of trust means being honest, demonstrating integrity, keeping promises and being loyal. And it means being known for standing up for your own convictions. Respect means that you treat others considerately. Not that you not that you admire or you agree with their views or the behaviors, but respectful is a commitment to treating others in a way that it does not demean, take advantage of them. You don't it doesn't you know you don't marginalize. You try to let humanity to reach out and spark that intrinsic thing about self that we all should have. Responsibility, accepting your accountability for your own actions, being courteous of the moral and ethical implications of deciding not to act. Being responsible, being accountable means being accountable, pursuing excellence and exercising self restraint. Where fairness, on the other hand, is working towards an equitable outcome. Being fair means being open minded, be, be willing to listen, put, confront your own biases that will influence a decision, put it away to give yourself a opportunity to grow, to aim up. Caring. Caring means that your awareness of being concerned for each person's well-being and your attention to not being hurtful. Care requires empathy and kindness. We would all have moments where we could do our own self-reflection where we were less than how we perceive ourselves, where empathy and kindness could be found, and it's on us to really take a look at these things, especially as leaders in leadership positions. It really matters. It's important. Citizenship is a civic virtue of knowing that the member of the community, and as a member of the community, you have responsibilities to do your part and contribute to the well-being of the neighborhood, the community, the town, country, the world as an extension. Citizenship means you're willing to abide by not only the laws and the social obligations, but also voice up when those that you would put in places of leadership don't do the best that they can. It's about enabling you and those around you to hold a lot of important people accountable. And that don't really happen in Trinidad and Tobago, as it should, on both ends of the spectrum. Citizenship is important. Example, after a concert on campus one Friday night, the two students, they were at the ticket sales receipt, and the money in the cash drawer was $120 short of the number of tickets sold. So they were baffled at the difference. The students turned in the accounts, and the next day they presented the problem to the student activities office, the as is. However, that same afternoon, a third student came into the office carrying an envelope which contained the $120. The the money had apparently come in during the ticket sales rush, and it had been set aside instead of being locked in the cash drawer. So the office accountant clerk asks, so why you didn't just keep the money? No one would have known. Well, the student quickly replied, but I would have known, and I don't do things like that. A person of character is trustworthy. They're honest, they keep promises, they're loyal, they have integrity. Um, they treat people with respect, they're courteous, they're non-violent, they are against, they are non-prejudiced, they're accepting, they are responsible, they take accountability, they pursue excellence, they show self-restraint. They try to, as much as possible, to be fair, open, reasonable, unbiased. Uh, they add caring, to be compassionate, empathetic, and they pursue to be good citizens, which and they do their share of community service, to protect and enhance the environment. Now, this in itself is a real act for any one person to follow, but it's a benchmark that can anchor us when we veer off course or lost at sea. It's a pointer that helps to gather our best self. So going back to that girl in the office, that student's conscientiousness of her own value system and the commitment to her integrity was so embedded that she couldn't even imagine behaving any differently. The trust and respect that she would have earned from that accountant would have been written in stone right there based on what she said. So personal style preferences, you may see yourself as a caring person committed to being fair and just. Yet you might be puzzled why some people perceive you as judgmental or rigid. Understanding your personality preferences will help to explain how you function in the world and how you're perceived by others. How humans, the psychological type, like that describes how humans adapt to the world around them. And it is so different from each one because of personality preferences. The study of personality, it, it, it consumes the content of many psychological courses, books, and specialized journals. You're so accustomed to the way you view things, get things done, the way you interact, make decisions, that you perhaps you can't imagine doing them differently. And in such it is really essential that you have the capacity to broaden your approach. But the first steps is to identify them. You don't know what you don't know. And once you know, then you will go through. Well, if you want to be better, then you'll be more accepting. If it comes to you as a shock and stuff, then you'll go through your periods of ignorance, your denials, and until you finally reach around to your acceptance. So as Carl Jung identified in 1923, he identified the four core functions of the human adaptation, and he called them the personality archetype and temperament types. Jung's Young's type or typology includes the four pairs of adaptive orientations that are diametrically opposed to each other. And the four types are the four pairs again: the extrovert, introvert, sensing, intuiting, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. So let's go to the first one, which is extrovert, introvert. The first of these are the first of the four is it contains and it concerns our mode of relating to the world. There are differences between those who are oriented to the outer world, uh, those are the extroverts, and those who prefer their inner world, introverts. The extroverts do their best thinking out loud, and in dialogue with others. The extroverts get energy from being around people. That charges them. They're sociable. When if you're given a 20 minutes of free time before going somewhere or having to attend something and activities is going on, you will tend to find an introvert going out there to see what exactly is going on. Uh, on the other hand, people who are introverts, they are more oriented to their inner world or their feelings and ideas. The introvert would prefer to think it through, before think it through, and then they would reflect before forming and stating their opinions. They do their most work, they do their best work through internal reflection, and they gain energy by creating private space, even in a crowd. They they do very well in high interactive settings, but most times they leave those settings drained of energy and need private time to renew. So given an introvert that same 20 minutes, the introvert might make an entry into a journal, or they might pull out a file or check some upcoming meeting and review what has to be covered. The use of these words is sometimes confusing because extrovert don't necessarily mean outgoing, and the introvert doesn't mean that they're shy and withdrawn from the world. The term just refers to the preferred orientation of the outer or the inner world. Sensing and intuiting, that's the second function covers in your preference for perceiving the world around you. Sensing people are very practical and realistic, preferring the present or past to the abstractions of the future. Whereby intuiting people prefer the big picture. They like to see see it as a whole. They are innovative and they use their imagination to develop many possibilities. Intuitive people like to project into the future. They live in anticipation of how things can be better, improve, and change. Sensing people might say it's if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Whereby an intuitive would say there must be a better way to do it. It's the differences between these two preferences are the source of great misunderstandings, and it places a gulf between the two. That's from Kersey and Bates, 1984. You may hear that this gulf might be expressed in a discussion when one person says, wait a minute, wait. We need more information about before we decide, or what do the rules in the student handbook say? And another person might say, well, we can't know everything, and we are close enough to have an idea of what might work, so let's just give it a try and see what happens. It's very important that groups need these type of people, those who are grounded in reality and those who think of the possibilities. So one deals with what is right in front of him, the other one scans his horizon, and when placed together, they develop the middle ground. By extension, they can both see the full path to the journey. Thinking, feeling. Well, that's the third core function in the mode of judging. Thinking and feeling. Those who prefer to thinking, T, they use the logic and rationality. The head rules rather than the heart. Thinking approaches through critical thinking, the analysis, and reliance on the objective scientific method, and are rewarded in the school systems, whereby a feeling type people will prefer to make judgments that account for relationships and the importance of the human values and beliefs, with great emphasis on personal friendships. Those that feel those that prefer feeling, might find those who think to be cold or too objective, whereas a thinker will feel that a feeling type is too emotional and unstable to stand firm on a decision. This is the only scale that shows a gender pattern when men making up like 60% of a T preference group and women making up 60% of a F preference group. Misunderstandings that on occasion that we usually attribute to gender differences may in reality actually be reflective of a personality difference. Judging and perceiving is the fourth core function, and this involves judging and perceiving. Right? So people who use the J preferences, they like to tie up loose ends and seek closure. They like clear beginnings, deadlines, and endings. Whereby perceiving type, they would like to keep things open-minded, open-ended, and they would want to gather as much information as possible. They usually handle ambiguity well, and they would go with the flow and comfortable of leaving things unresolved. Yeah. Those with J preferences, they might seem close-minded or driven, and those with P preferences might seem unfocused and have hard times getting anything done. They might seem that way, but that's not necessarily the case. Right. We each have developed preferences of how we most comfortably perceive and judge our worlds. These these pairs now they find 16 primary personality types. Yeah. They help us understand ourselves and the others help us understand ourselves and the others. That's Mayer's 1980. Your four-letter composite profile is a combination then of the E or I, the S or N, the T or F, and the J or P. We can do and use all 8 of these processes, but generally we prefer a consistent pattern. If you're right-handed, yes, you could write with your left hand, but you prefer to write with your right hand. If you're introvert, yes, you enjoy doing things with people, enjoying people and having good conversations, but you must have time to spend to think and reflect to do your best work. If there was an extrovert, on the other hand, you certainly can listen and reflect, but they prefer the energy of interacting with others to build and refine your ideas because you like to think out loud. So understanding the impact of our preferences and comfortably using our non-preferred strategies is a skill to acquire. Indeed, the second subtitle of Developing Leaders, that's from Fitzgerald and Kirby, 1997, is integrating reality and vision, mind and heart. Acquiring skills and understanding the impact of preferences is a powerful tool if we know how to use it. Yeah. All right. So the personality assessment tool is perhaps the best known method of assessing Jungian's personality types, and the two are the Myers-Briggs type indicator and the Kersey temperament sorter. The Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI, is useful in understanding relationships in leadership settings, whereby introverts, extroverts, and introverts, we use these things. The introverts are predominant in fields of study such as science and among careers such as universities, whereby the extroverts, which in terms of percentages, when we look at research done by the MBTI, it indicates that 65% to 75% of the general population are extroverts, and that women are slightly higher than men in this preference. Um, I don't know if it has been reviewed, but this is not my voice. Okay. Approximately 2/3 of men prefer thinking and 2/3 of women prefer feeling. However, among female graduate students, engineering students, and business executives, the majority prefer thinking approaches. Among men in the arts, counseling, and some health fields, those with feeling preferences predominate. Leaders. Leaders come from all groupings and preferences, but they clearly contain certain patterns of preferences, may exceed in some areas, in some careers, sorry, or fields that draw on those preferences as strengths. Macaulay asserts that from the type perspective, one would not ask the question, what type is the best leader? But rather, one would ask, how does each type show leadership? Now, this theory of psychological type is widely used in leadership assessments to understand self, others, and the dynamics of relationships and leadership processes. But it is not without its flaws. There can be some indication that the type is not stable, and that it can change over time. Action-oriented extrovert, probably someone now joining a service, may become more contemplative and reflective introvert later, in their life, after having experiences that would, shape their patterns of thought and their behavior. The MBTI, it is occasionally used improperly as well. It would be ludicrous to use the MBTI to hire somebody, to assume that that person can be no different from their 4-letter score, when in actuality they may be well developed in using several preferences. Becoming aware of your personality preferences helps move you further towards your self-awareness. As awareness grows, you begin to see the need to build other skills and to have a wider range of responses in decision making and in relationships with others. A useful application occurs when you realize that the conflict you have with another may be just because it's a clash of preferences, which can lead to, once found out, a more understanding way of relating. You will then find it comfortable to say stuff like, hey, sorry, I know it seemed like a jump in the gun, but I just do my thinking, I just do it out loud. And I know I'm asking a lot of questions, detailed questions, but it really helps me to understand the bigger picture that you're trying to bring for me to see. These are interesting ideas presented today. I'm not, if you're given an idea today, you're not ready to decide on what it is. You might need more time to think about it overnight. So can we decide on our meeting tomorrow, because that person may be one who needs to introspect and conceptualize. So here we have some of the indicator keywords. So we see the extrovert, introvert, And we look, as we come down, we look at it, we see sociable, whereby the introvert, territorial, interaction, concentration, ex- external, whereby he's internal, breadth, depth, extensive, intensive, and we see the contrasts. We move over to sensing and intuiting. The sensing gathers experiences. Intuition doesn't mind a hunch. We see realistic. Intuition is speculative. The sensing like facts. Intuitive doesn't mind fiction. Sensible, imaginative. So we get is a different, the contrast, sorry, of the two. But when we look at them together, where as a leader you will be meeting persons of different types, and we look at all of what they can bring to bear, it's really a formidable and impressive thing to watch. Thinking, feeling. So we see thinking and feeling. Moving on to the judging and perceiving. Yeah. Settled, pending. So you'll get the point, basically. Yeah. Approaches to learning. Yeah. Like one of these elements of leadership is focus on accomplishing something or changing something. How do you have individuals understand the need for change, and how they were how effective that the individuals and groups can adapt to change is a learning process. Human beings go through a continual process of adaptation to changing conditions, whether those conditions are imposed or induced. They are learning applications of the Jungian types presented as personality preferences in the previous section. Yeah. Use of the MBTI would bring a complex understanding to the combinations as we saw. So if you're a sensing type, a sensing learner, you would like your details and your facts and prefer inductive thinking. You possibly like thinking where you value the story and background of an issue to establish and the context to learn about it, whereby intuitive will retain the small details well. You like possibility, that's the end. They like the possibility of thinking, and they would cast a wide net to gather a great deal of information from diverse sources. The sensing or intuitive, the preference may be related to a preference for either deductive or inductive ways of thinking. So being inductive means that you will see the big picture and you will know what the final outcome is or what the whole is. And then you're comfortable looking at it, at the parts and pieces. So, but if you're inductive, you like to build it up to the big picture or the conclusion by assembling all the parts and evolving your conclusion. So you prefer to see each tree before you stand back and actually see the forest as an inductive. A deductive learner might be frustrated with the inductive learner and say, where in the world are you going with this argument? You know, can you just get to the point? But understanding the difference in approach, the same deductive learner might say, hey, it will help me to know where this is going if you so I could fit your examples into the bigger picture. These are the classes or organizations you know that are made up of one predominant type. Often a major will attract students who are more similar than different. If, however, you are mismatched with a learning style, you may wonder why the group does not readily see the benefits of your suggestions, or perhaps it might even reject what you propose altogether. Groups that may be composed of one predominant type may learn type one, excuse, composed of one predominant type of learning preference will find the strength when it includes all the other approaches to enrich the outcome. High diverse groups of learners need to acknowledge that people learn differently and offer options and choices that will appeal to the diversity within the group. For example, top performers may prefer to work with top performers. However, what they would have missed is that what they perceive as would be top for them in one field, for the perceived subpar performer, they would actually be the top performer in another field. And that's a lesson in life that we should acknowledge. Conclusion. So this chapter discussed some important aspects of our self-awareness that become key to understanding yourself as a participant and as a leader. The chapter explored ways to examine your strengths and weaknesses with a goal of developing your talent and having a realistic self-concept with healthy self-esteem and confidence. So it is all geared towards wellness and aiming up. We then reviewed basic values that are essential in a person of character, building on the psychological and educational approaches to leadership. We presented some models to assess your personality preference and your learning perspectives. These are the references. In addition to the book that my colleague would have recommended. Are there any questions? If none, well, we have some for you. So at this time, I would ask each group member to nominate one person per group to answer one question.
We have 10 groups. How many volunteers you have?
10 groups? Okay, so I'll take it. We'll use odd numbers. Yeah. And then we'll come back and this group is group 1, so we have 9 groups. And so we'll take it from 3, 6, 9, and you'll just add in 10. So nominate one person. Hey, Jason.
Yeah, Darren.
Yeah. Relation to the questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Tell me, don't say it now. Yeah.
Oh, well, you want to start with the first question, and or you would like me to start with the first question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so the first question I would like to ask good friend, my good friend Dexter Noel. There's my good friend Dexter Noel. I'd like to believe he's still with us. Dexter?
Yes, I'm here.
Nice, nice. So this question is for you. So it's a true or false question. All right, very simple. One, and this question comes under development of self for leadership. One of the 4 lessons from which to develop self-knowledge is accept responsibility and blame no one. True or false?
True.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Well done, Dexter. You are correct. So Darren, I guess I could ask the second question.
Okay. Well, seeing that we didn't get any volunteers, I know my friends, so I will call them. So I would like to call to answer question 2, Natasha Walker. Going once. Is Natasha? Hi, good afternoon. You ready?
No.
Excellent. So this question is also a true or false question. Okay. One of the 5 strategies to find your passions and strengths is to know what things you find easy to learn quickly. True or false?
You broke up for a while. Can you repeat the question, please? The last part.
One of the 5 strategies to find your passions and strengths is to know what things you find easy to learn quickly. True or false?
I would say true.
That is correct.
Do I get a prize?
No, you just got one question. Thank you for your
Okay.
participation.
Okay, Darren, thanks.
Jason.
All right, so question number 3, I'd like to direct this question to my other friend, Anton Blackman. It's my personal friend. Is Anton still with us?
Yeah, Jason. Afternoon.
Nice, nice, very good. All right, yeah, very simple question. And in fact, I would have hinted at this question during my presentation to pay particular attention. So, you want to be careful. You want to be a bit careful with this question. This is also a true or false question. All right, and it falls under developing your talent. All right, so with regards to developing your talent, there are two assumptions that can guide you in your leadership, right? One of the assumptions is each person's talents are limited and common. Is that true or false?
Just repeat the question. Repeat the response, Jason.
No problem.
Each person what? It's
Each
common and
person, yeah, each person's talents are limited and common. Limited and common. Is that true or false?
a very tricky question. It depends on the perspective. But for me, I would say false.
Absolutely correct. The answer is
Good guess, Anton. Good guess.
Yeah, because
right?
I mean, as if you look at the individual, all individuals are unique. So
That's right.
Thanks, Jason.
Correct.
Excellent. Well done, Anton. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I would now nominate, or I'd like Juma Cox. Come on down, the price is right. Is Juma Cox here?
Yeah, that.
Good afternoon. Okay, question. The Josephson Institute of Ethics proposes 6 pillars of character that are enduring and indispensable to ethical leadership practices. These pillars are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. I will read it again. The Josephson Institute of Ethics proposes 6 pillars of character that are enduring and indispensable to ethical leadership practices. These pillars are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. True or false?
I'll say true.
You are correct.
Excellent. Excellent. So all the participants got their questions correct. All right. So that tells me that everyone was paying attention, which is excellent. All right. So that brings us to the end of our presentation of chapter 4 BTEX Exploring Leadership, which is understanding yourself. So thank you very much for your attention and participation.